Another Sony has appeared in the wild. This is the Sony KV-XF29M35. It is a pure flat CRT television from 1999, 29 inches or 68 centimeters in size. This is a very early example of when Sony went to the pure flat, when they went to the silver casing. That happened in about 1998 or thereabouts, so this is quite early in that transition period. We'll have a closer look on the front. We have a hatch with an input, S-video, composite, stereo left and right, headphones, couple of buttons, automatic tuning, hatch back up, source change, volume down, volume up, program down, program up, infrared receiver, power on and off switch, Sony logo, true surround with SRS and tandem 3D sound system, Nicam stereo, teletext. Now that tandem 3D sound system will be revealed very shortly. Square design on the side, on both sides, carry handles. If we go around the back, we transition into a black or dark shell. The back half's dark. I don't want the trolley to run away, but I'll get it into the sun where we can see things more clearly. Moving along, there's our label with model number, made in Malaysia. A couple of carry handles on the back to help assist in moving. Not many TVs have them in the back. Down to the all-important connections. This is where things get very important. Now you can see what we've got here and is fairly plain, fairly ordinary, nothing to write home about. You've got two sets of composite in with sound and an S-video and a set out, as well as RF and a woofer connection that might be just in the shade a bit there. You've got red positive, black negative terminals for the speaker wires. I can show you that. That's over here. This is the woofer. This is the tandem 3D sound system. This is the rave. It simply sits on top of the television. It doesn't actually attach. The rubber feet sit in matching alcove slots, and this wire gets plugged in the back, so we can do that right now. On the back of the television, notch and another notch. That's where the rubber feet sit. This goes on. Just sits on there. I wonder if it probably wouldn't vibrate off, but you do wonder because it doesn't really secure. But it sits in there pretty snugly. Now, wire hangs down the back, and then we simply plug those in, which I'll do when my hands are free. The matching remote control for the television is the Remote Commander RM-954. The back's off the TV, the chassis is pulled out a little bit so we can see it more clearly. The tube is a monitor grade tube M68 LNH070X. Where is the country of manufacture? I don't know. I don't know for the tube. Another label with the model number, also that SEC-U24A-A is the chassis model number specific to Oceania for Australia and New Zealand most likely. There is an Indian version that has a slightly different SCC number. Wouldn't be too much different compared to the Aussie one. Couple of big speakers in the left side and the right side. Fairly sizable chassis, but nothing super crazy. No big CPU. Probably a 50 and 60 Hertz refresh rate. I don't see anything too sophisticated in the chassis to support 100 Hertz processing, certainly not at that time. The quest now is to power up the television, see if it is light gun compatible, check out the geometry and see if we can find any other quirks about it. TV's ready to be turned on. It's in standby. Just push the power on button with the remote. It's powering up. NES is hooked in on the front inputs. Composite video, PAL NES. We'll quickly cycle through the inputs. Analog, antenna RF, AV1, AV2, nice purity, uniform blue screen, sharp green text. So far so good. Back to the NES, we'll have a look at the menu system. Pretty basic. Picture mode, I've adjusted it. I've got sharpness down low, which I typically do on most televisions. Brightness, high as possible, but not to the point of making blacks turn grey. Colour, up a bit, enough to give it some punch and not bleed too much. Picture, which is contrast, enough to make it a little bit punchy, but not overpowering and not too dim, not down too far low. Sound mode, don't particularly care too much where that's at, especially for making a video. Although it'd be interesting to see if it pumps out some bass through those speakers on top. And what else have we got? Language. Oh, picture rotation. Probably not the best screen to be rotating the picture on. It's not full screen. You can see it. You can see it rotating. I might do that a little bit more precisely if we get a grid pattern up. That's good enough. Let's test the gun itself. Zappers in for your viewing pleasure. Good start. I'm sitting off to the side a little bit. That's a good start. I should have done game B to get 2 ducks near the edge. The edges can be difficult to hit. I'd say you'd have to say that that's a winner. You'd have to say that it's light gun compatible, not a surprise. Remember, it's not the flatness of the CRT that prevents light guns working, it's the refresh rate. The refresh rate on this model will be 50 and 60 Hertz. Perfectly normal, thus perfectly gun compatible. I'm now going to go into the service menu. The code to get in is a little different. It's quite similar to the typical Sony method of getting into their televisions. The TV must be in standby. This means there must be power to the television. The red standby light is currently lit, so this is the correct state to enter the code. The code is 4-button sequential press. You press display, then 5, then volume up, then power. You don't need to hold them all at the same time. You press 1 and then release it, press the next, and so on. Let's see if I can get it in one go. Right, it's turning on. The last button press is power, so that's going to turn it on regardless, but let's see if it's successfully got into the service menu. Yes, it has. What we've got, what I can decrypt for you here now, is that is the version of the firmware or software in the television, 1.7C. That is the hour counter, which is quite low if that's 2,786. So you might think it'd be more likely to be 32,786. I'll have to double check that. The greater likelihood is that the number on screen is hexadecimal. If we convert 2,768 to decimal, we get 10,088, which is probably the actual correct number of hours. That's not an unusual figure to expect on a television at all. Moving on to the Sega Saturn and NTSC version of the console, NS Video. Sony, always good with their multi-standard capabilities. That is their ability to play NTSC sources on this TV, for example, a PAL television, PAL territory, yet everything NTSC seems to always work. At least since the 80s this is the case. No exceptions with this set. S-Video is looking good. Not our RGB level, but it's still looking good. I'd love to actually see the TV in RGB, given the treat of S-Video right now. Let's test out the sound of the television some more. I've got layer section on Saturn handy. It has some punchy bass, and we'll see if we can crank it up. Layer section in the Saturn playing. Let's crank the sound up. Let's get that bass adjustment off. It's just on neutral. Volume's up a bit. Sound. You go to dynamic, you can hear it's bassier. But what we'll do, put the bass right up. It'll sound a bit money, but we want to get it up. We want to get it up as high as possible. Oh, hang on. Here we go. Even this BBE seems to put more emphasis on that top speaker. Sounds like the sound's going up to the top speaker rather than the TV's own speakers. Maximum volume. Not really any distortion. Pretty good performance for a television. Not on the level of Bang & Olufsen, but still good for a TV nonetheless. Finally, the last console to test on the TV is a Super Famicom running in only composite video. I'm about to show a grid pattern on the screen, and I am surprised somewhat. I had the feeling that it would be worse than this, but it's actually fairly good. I noticed on Duck Hunt I could see this curve up the side here. There's a bit of a gap there, and it's not unusual for Sonys to have this sort of geometrical imperfections, but it's not that bad, to be really quite frank. We're back in composite video, however, and that is a little bit of a disappointment, but on the Saturn the S video wasn't too bad. And this really brings me to my last remarks. The television came out in 1999. At this time in Australia, component input on televisions was fairly uncommon, quite new, a bit of a luxury. Unfortunately, this set doesn't have component in. SCART had been abandoned by Sony Australia for quite some time at this point, although it would make a very strong comeback very soon. However, we're at that stage where we've only got composite video here, component reserved for the high-end models. From what I understand, this BG3 chassis can be modified for RGB. Its derivatives, other revisions of the chassis can be RGB modded, so really that would be the way to take full advantage of the set. Being Sony, it's going to be popular, and it's not half bad in S-video. However, if you want to take it to another level, if you want some more utility with this Sony, then modding it would be the way to go, and it would probably actually look quite good. So that's where it's at. If you're a casual sort of a player, S-video composite, probably okay, but if you want the best, then RGB is the way to go. Hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a while since I've put up any. There's still more to come. Thank you for watching.